on the How to Podcast series. Always great talking to Tamzin. She's so generous with her time. We have a great conversation today around going the extra mile. What does that really mean? We use that saying all the time, but do we really know where it comes from? We can talk about that a little bit. We're going to talk about how to keep on going as a content creator, as a podcaster, an author, whoever you are in life. How do you just keep on going? How do you get past the barriers in life? And some tips from Tamzin as well on what does success mean to you? What does it look like? What does it feel like today? And she gives some great insight. Tamzin is a great co-host. Happy to have her back again for her third time here on the How to Podcast series. If you're looking to co-host, you want to jump on and talk about podcasting, talk about your podcast and your podcast journey, always looking for great new co-hosts to come join me here on the How to Podcast series. I do co-hosted episodes and I also do single episodes where I get on and share some things that are happening in the podcast world, how to grow your podcast, how to be a better podcaster, how to start, all those great stuff. And we don't talk tech. We're not here to talk about microphones. That is extremely boring to me personally, so I'm not doing that. And there's other podcasts for that. Go have at it. You can listen to somebody explain the 25 different types of microphones. That's not what we do here. We're here about the content. We're here about building relationships and community. And having somebody like Tamzin come on the podcast just makes this the best opportunity ever to learn from somebody who is a great contributor and content creator in her space, a great coach. Check her out at Tamzin Hall Coaching as well. Though all the links in the show notes to everything we talk about and the quotes that we share. Thank you for being here on the How to Podcast series. Here we go. Great coach. Check her out at Tamzin Hall Coaching as well. Though all the links in the show notes to everything we talk about and the quotes that we share. Thank you for being here on the How to Podcast series. Here we go.
And the key to any podcast is poor sound quality and tons of commercials.
Here we go. Okay, welcome to the podcast. It's a How to Podcast series, and my co-host is back for round 3. I haven't scared her off yet. Tamzin Hall is back. Tamzin, welcome back to the podcast. Hello. How are you this lovely day?
I am very well, thank you. I have to say, it is not so lovely. It's lovely in my office, but it's not so lovely outside in the UK today. It's a very dark, damp, wet and grizzly day here. What's it like with you, Dave, in Canada?
Yeah, we actually had snow yesterday.
Did you?
In Toronto, Canada, Toronto, Ontario, they don't like snow. So they're complaining like crazy, but maybe, I don't know, not very much snow, just enough the dusting of snow. And they're already freaking out already. So we had none in St. Catharines. We're about an hour and a half away, and we're kind of a warmer area than Toronto, I guess. So we don't get as much snow. But it's coming, and, we only have, like 6 to 7 weeks left of the year or something like that. I don't know. I can't even do math right now in my head. But the end of the year is coming, so snow's going to be on its way to Canada, and that's never fun. Do you guys get a lot of snow?
No, not really. It's disappointing. No, I always feel like with snow, it means Christmas is coming. Like, Christmas is coming when it snows. It never snows before Christmas in the UK, but just Christmas and snow just go hand in hand for me. So we don't get snow here. I'm in the south I'm right at the bottom, right on the south. Okay. So we don't get snow. And if we do get snow, everything comes to an absolute standstill because we can't cope with snow.
Yeah. So I have, I worked last year, like I work a nighttime job and then I come home in the morning. So when I went to work that one night last year, it was the beginning of a snowstorm. When I came out to my car to come home after my shift, there was so much snow that a 15-minute drive home took me 4.5 hours.
Oh my word.
4.5 hours to get home after working 8-hour shift. So I didn't get home. And then I had to walk for like 3 blocks because my car couldn't get down the road because the snow was higher than the wheels of my car. So that's what we deal with when we get snow. We get like a lot of snow. Not fun. No. Not fun. So I'm a little jealous of England right now and the UK and thinking, it'd be kind of nice to have just snow in the air. That would be I'll be all right with that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So if you ever want a lot of snow, come on to Canada and we'll take you for a little tour and show you around.
I love that. I do want to. I do. I feel like I need to experience a winter in the snow, proper snow, rather than this silly dusting that we get. So yes, I might take you up on that one day.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Someday. And then we're going to head over to you someday. That'd be nice to see and get some fish and chips, right? Is that how you say it? Fish and chips? No?
Fish and chips, yes. A nice afternoon tea somewhere. Visit
An
to
afternoon
Big Ben.
tea, yes.
Yeah.
Big Ben. Very nice. See, I would love that. I'm a huge history guy. Okay. So I would like to get off the beaten path and go to some historical places that really have like a good story behind it and stand there and take that in. That's what I would love to do. So that's one thing I love about the UK and Europe and everything is the history. Canada, we're kind of a younger country, so we don't have what you have. So I would love to experience that. So that's something that's on my to-do list.
Fabulous. Well, I can't
right there. We have Niagara Falls, though.
Well,
I can take you to Niagara Falls, like you mentioned. So I can take you there. So there you go. We have that. Awesome. Well, we're going to talk episode 3. We're going to talk a little bit about the extra mile. You and I had a conversation about the extra mile and going the extra mile as a podcaster, as a content creator, as a coach, right? What does that mean to go the extra mile? And you had an interesting quote you wanted to share that you came across. And then we're going to kind of go into this a little bit and talk a little bit about the extra mile. So your quote, what was that?
I'm excited about this. So my quote is, "It's never crowded along the extra mile." And shall I explain what I thought that means, and then you can explain?
Yeah, let's go. Sure. Yeah.
So
yeah,
we were talking about business together, and I kind of said, actually, by pushing ourselves and being consistent and carrying on, and the same is with podcasts. Anything we do, if we keep going until we get past that first mile, it isn't going to be crowded. There's not going to be people there, because actually only a few people do the extra mile and get to that extra mile. And when we get there in business or podcasts and kind of get past that stage where everyone else has given up because it's hard and it's challenging, and it is, sometimes it's an emotional roller coaster, isn't it? And if you can keep going past all those people that have given up, it's not crowded. And so actually you're going to be more successful because it isn't as crowded. That was kind of my definition and how I thought that quote meant. But Dave, you had some really lovely history behind that quote.
Yeah. Okay, so before I jump into that, what's a definition or an example you feel or you've seen or you've done of going the extra mile? How does that look in real life? Do you have an example from your own story?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I can think of loads, and I think I'll try and keep it as relevant to podcasting and starting out doing something new as I can. And actually, it's not going to be my story. I'm going to borrow it from a client of mine, because I won't name them, but I feel like this is a lot more powerful than maybe anything that I can think of right now. So he was somebody who built his business and was building his business alongside actually, funny enough, he had a night job as well, Dave. So a night job, building his business. And it was really hard. And he was trying to put himself out there, trying to make a difference. And it was in the theatre industry. So kind of acting, theatre, plays. And it was something that he was so passionate about, quite a lot of competition. And he would just be relentless. And I started working with him after 10 years of him trying, working, those two separate, building a business, having, working nights, building a business. And it was relentless. And I could tell when I spoke to him, he was tired, really tired of just continuing and trying. And actually, as soon as I saw him push through that next barrier, I look at it as literally you've got that mile and then you've got that barrier, and push through it. And he just worked that final push. He worked so hard, and he had the strategies in place, and he had the belief in place, and he pushed through, and all of a sudden success just came to him, and he got some really big contracts, and actually ended up being able to leave his job. But it took him 10 years of hard work, networking, building contacts, getting his name out there, doing all that. And he was absolutely relentless. And, it was amazing to see him breaking through that barrier. And all of a sudden, look what I've achieved. So that's when I talk about going the extra mile, I think of him, because he really did. All of a sudden, he was there in a space where it wasn't crowded, that he could really shine and really be successful.
Yeah, I love it. That's a great visual too. You can see the barrier. You can see him pushing through it. That's amazing. So when we talked about this, we brought up the topic of the extra mile. I just was asking you if you had any background into where the origin story of the extra mile came from, because we use this in regular speak all the time, and I don't think a lot of people understand where this really comes from. So again, I mentioned earlier, I love history. So I've studied all kinds of different history in the past, and some of the history I've studied as well has been like church history, which is quite interesting. And this by no means is a religious podcast episode by any means, but just to give some context to the term extra mile, there's a very familiar story and passage biblically, and it's called the Sermon on the Mount. And in that, Jesus is speaking to his audience, and he references that if somebody asks you to go a mile, go 2 miles. And what he's referring to is there was a Roman law when the Romans were ruling the Jews, the Jewish nation, that a Roman soldier could come to you, Tamzin. You could be having a picnic with your family out there out in the park, just sitting down to eat, and a Roman soldier could come up to you, your spouse, someone in your home, and say, pick up my stuff, pick up my gear, my bags, my sword, my shield, carry it for a mile. And you legally had to do that. You had to drop everything, and you were compelled to carry some Roman soldiers' equipment for a mile, and you had no choice. It was a law. So imagine this, you have to leave your family or leave your job or leave whatever you were doing at the moment. Like, I have food cooking on the stove. Doesn't matter. You have a mile of stuff to carry now. And it's not like you're not carrying some little light bag. You're carrying heavy gear for a mile. It's hard work. So now you're a mile away from home, carrying and lugging and dragging this equipment for this soldier who could carry it themselves because they're strong soldiers, right? But they just don't feel like carrying it. So you're dragging this stuff along for a mile, grumbling under your breath. You're a mile from home. And then you get to the end of your mile. And what normally would happen is a Jewish citizen would drop the bags, drop all the equipment on the ground, and then huff and steam off and make the 1 mile journey back home because you've done your commitment. At the end of that first mile, the soldier was expecting you to be free of your duty, and he would just pick somebody else and they would carry it the next mile. So when we got to the end of the mile, what this message and what this topic was talking about, when somebody compels you to go 1 mile, go 2. Because in the first mile, nobody really cares about what you think, who you are, because you're just doing your basic commitment, you're just serving to the basic levels of what you're required to do. So you have to do it. So I really don't care what you think. Just do the job. But when you get to the second mile and you say, can I go 1 more mile with you, to the soldier, the look of confusion on their face, because now you want to go an extra mile, meaning you've walked 2 miles one direction and you have to go 2 miles back. That's 4 miles that you have to walk, right? But you want to go the extra mile. And why is that? Because you want to serve, you want to give, and in that second mile is when you have deeper conversations with somebody who is quote unquote your enemy, who is forcing you to do something you don't want to do. In that second mile, that conversation between you and that person that you're serving is completely different, because you've gone past your duty into how can I serve you? And in that moment, that's when you have a better open line of communication with your client, your customer, your listener, your reader, whatever you're doing, because you've gone past the minimum requirements. And for when we talk about going the extra mile in podcasting, for example, is, show up, but how can you show up and do more? Maybe engaging with your audience, maybe promoting other people, putting others first before you put yourself first. There's so many things that you can do in that second mile that doesn't usually happen in the first mile when you're just doing the basics to get things done. So I love that visual, right? And then when you brought up this quote, that it's not crowded in the extra mile. Yeah, because everybody's gone home. They've done their minimum. They don't want to do any more. In the second mile is when the real people show up and really serve their audience. So that's what I love about that whole thing.
I think can you imagine if somebody had written a book about all the conversations that happened during the extra mile?
Oh, I love it. That's a great idea. If you're going to steal that, make sure you give us credit here on the How to Podcast series and Tamzin Hall for that. Yeah. Please, because Tamzin just threw out a great idea there. Yes.
And I think also it's about doing, so in the first mile, that's where we do all the things, all the normal things. So look at podcasts, what every single person does when they launch a podcast, and things they do when they have a podcast. They record it, they edit it, they put it out into the world with some visuals, and they do some show notes, and that's what the standard.
Yeah.
But actually, to be noticed and to be different, what can we, our audience, what can you do that is that step up that makes you stand out, to do something that bit more for your audience? There's always something that we can think of that we can do, or we can have conversations to figure out what we can do there's just that bit extra, because it's that bit extra that is really going to get you noticed. Those soldiers, they wouldn't have noticed all the people that just went that 1 mile with them. They would forget who they were. They wouldn't even remember them. But the ones that went the second mile.
Yep. Like, think of the depth of conversation you have with somebody who's going beyond their requirements. Yeah. Right? So even if we switch gears and just talk about a regular job that people have, and you're scheduled Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., you come in at 1 minute to 9, you punch in, you work till 5:01, and you punch out and go home. That's the basics. That's the first mile. Yeah. Here's my task. Get your task done. Go home. That's your first mile. Now, I'm not talking about staying in the office for 80 hours a week. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about your attitude. I'm talking about how you show up. Are you just there? Are you building community within your community? Are you helping others succeed? Are you just there for yourself? Right? Those are all the things that happen in the second mile. So it's not more about adding more hours to your day. It's more about what you're doing with the people that you interact with, and how you treat them, and how you put other people ahead of you. That is something that I don't see a lot in podcasting. I see a lot of me in all of the call to actions and everything that we do. We talk about, go check me out, come and see me. It's all about me. But what about the listener? What about the guest? What about those that we're interacting with? How can we help them? Fellow podcasters, how can we grow it for everyone and not just for ourselves? And again, going back to that line about a rising tide lifts all ships, by helping others, we're actually, in essence, helping ourselves, because we're lifting everyone up at the same time.
That's just so powerful. That's so powerful. It's true. I think actually when you started talking about that, I was thinking about I do lots about helping leaders to engage their staff and to have a workforce of either engaged or highly engaged people. And I have this visual that I use with a boat, and you have the boat, and on one end of the boat you have the disengaged people, the people that, like you're saying, they're turning up at 9 o'clock dead on, they're leaving at 5 o'clock, they take their lunch break, they just do the bare minimum to get their salary. And they're in one end of the boat. And then in the other end of the boat, you have the highly engaged people who they might still turn up at 9 and leave at 5, but if something happens and they have to stay later, they will do. If something happens and they need to come in a bit earlier, they will do. They're highly engaged with their peers, their colleagues. They're just going that extra mile. And then you have this group of people in the middle who are the engaged people. And what we want to do is we want to have those engaged people being highly engaged, because if they become highly disengaged, then the boat's going to sink, because the boat kind of goes like that. And what you want is you want the highly engaged people. And I suppose that's the same with podcasting as well. We want engaged and highly engaged listeners. We want our listeners to be waiting for our next episode. We want our listeners to be listening, sharing, subscribing, doing all of that stuff, rather than being disengaged. But we almost go about it, like you say, about, I want you to do this for me, I want you to do this for me, me. Actually, to engage staff and to engage and to move those staff from being engaged to being highly engaged, actually isn't about the company. We do that by turning our focus onto the employee. That's how we make them highly engaged. And it's the same with our listeners. To have them highly engaged, it's about them.
Yeah. And I think that's just something that's lacking, and just overall in business and in everything that we're doing. It just seems like there's a gap there. And I think as podcasters, I think we're so focused on giving to a community and building community around a message and everything. If we can do something that just helps us stand out, and it can be just the simplest things of building your audience in the right way from the beginning. So a lot of people that I talk to, Tamzin, they have small podcasts. They have a small podcast audience, 5-10 listeners for each episode. And they lament in the sense that it's like, well, I don't have 1,000 listeners, Tamzin. Like, am I successful? And I would love to kind of flip that around and use your small audience as your superpower, in that you can now reach out to 5 people and build a really quality, solid relationship one-on-one with these people, wherever they are in the world, by getting feedback, responding to feedback. I talked to you about Paulo starting his podcast, like in Brazil. Like, if you can reach out to these people and have a great conversation and build community around these people, they will become your promotion team. They will be there with you and stick with you because you invested in them. So don't walk into a room of empty chairs and 4 or 5 people sitting there waiting for you to speak and think that you are not successful. 4 or 5 people have shown up for you on a regular basis to learn from you, experience your content, interact with you, and they're making a point of making you part of their day. So never walk into a room like that. You could physically put your listeners into a room on chairs and say, oh, I only have 5 people here. Imagine walking to the stage and walking to the microphone and looking at a bunch of empty chairs. There's 5 people out of 100 there, and going, oh, there's only 5 of you? Well, it's not really worth my time to be here, so I'm going to go. What about the 5 that are here? There's 5 of us. We really, really like your content, Tams, and we want to hear from you. And there's not enough of us, right? So use your small audience as your superpower and build up people. And that's the extra mile stuff that goes beyond creating content, is interacting with people and doing it on a real basis, not fake or phony, but really caring about the people that interact with you, because they're showing up. There's a reason why they come to you. You could be watching television, going to a movie. They could be reading a book. They could be listening to another podcast. They could be doing a number of other things, but they show up for you every week. So there's got to be something in there that they love about you and what you're doing. So celebrate that and go the extra mile and pour into those people. That's kind of what I'm looking at for 2023.
Do you sometimes, and kind of I have this with my clients, and the conversation that I'm having, that actually people do feel like, and actually it goes back to a conversation we had, I think it was on the last episode, about numbers. Do you feel like a lot of people pin success to numbers? So I'm only successful if I have 100 listeners, 1,000 listeners. I'm only successful if I'm earning X amount of money. I'm only successful if I have X amount of downloads.
Yes. And that's scary.
Isn't it?
Right? Because that just means that the numbers are more important than the people. And I think we lose track of what the numbers represent. Right? Like I hear other podcast gurus saying you have to get 1,000 listens per episode or you're not successful. And I'm like, well, really? Like, how is that possible for a brand new podcaster who has no audience, who've never done this before? They have 2 episodes in the world. They've had 3 listens. And that's why I think a lot of people give up. Yeah. Is they're like, the distance between 3 downloads and 1,000 downloads for 1 episode, that's insurmountable. There's no way I'm going to get to there. So I might as well give up. And people quit. But their message is amazing. They're amazing people. And they have a heart for what they want to talk about. And they could help so many people. Again, go jump back to Paolo, wanting to help people learn English. Like, he sees a need and he wants to create something that helps people. And if he gets 1 download, awesome. You've helped 1 person that would never have got your help otherwise. And I just think that there's so much noise out there about what success looks like. And I remember as a new podcaster, Tamzin, going on like podcast groups on Facebook and something and asking, guys, what does good look like as a podcaster? Because I'm new and I have 10 downloads on my last episode. Am I doing okay? Like, is that a good number? And a lot of people would put you down and be like, it's 10. You're a rookie. It's like, well, we all start with 0 listeners on every episode. Even the biggest podcast in the world, when they launch their podcast episode, there's no listens. We all start from the same spot. There's fame, there's all kinds of other stuff that feed into it, but really it's what you do with it after you release your content. So I just think that there's just so much noise around what success looks like, and a lot of people get discouraged when they don't meet that number, that magical number. It's sad, really, because there's a lot of good people out there.
Okay, so I'm going to give you some tips on how you can ignore that noise. And actually, you're absolutely right, Dave. Figures, numbers are everywhere. You just have to go online and it's how to make your first 10K month, how to get 1,000 subscribers, how to get 10,000 followers, all of that. Actually, what success looks like to me might be very different to what success looks like to Dave. And what success looks like to me and Dave, it might be very different to what our listeners think success is. Mm-hmm. So I encourage you or I challenge anybody listening to this to set just grab a pen and paper and write down what success means to you. What does it mean to you without having a number on it? What would success look like? And what does success feel like to you? So this is you right now. I'm not talking about you in 10 years' time when you've been podcasting for 10 years and you have, you're going to be in a different spot in 10 years' time than you are today. I want to know what success looks like for you today. And then every single time you release a podcast, think about, okay, how will this be different? What do I need to see different to last time for me to feel successful? So it might be, for me, I put my podcast out there, I might have 10 listeners. Well, next time I might want to have 11 listeners, or actually I might want to say, I want somebody to engage with me, or I want to feel like I've given an extra tip, or I want to feel like I've spoken to somebody in my audience, or I want to do something to help and to go that extra mile that doesn't necessarily set an unrealistic target, that quite frankly, if you pin everything on and you don't hit that target, that's when we think, I'm going to give up. I can't do it. I haven't, I've put my podcast out there. It's the first podcast I've ever done. I haven't got 1,000 listeners. I'm going to give up. Because that's what happens if you set an unrealistic goal and it's based on something that you can't control. You can't control how many people listen to it. You just can't.
Yeah. I love it. That's amazing. Okay, so how do you measure success then, Tamzin, for what you're doing with your clients, with everything that you're working on? What is kind of a metric that you use to kind of show you that you're on the right path, at least, or you're headed towards the goal that you're hoping for? What's something that you do?
So interestingly, I don't really put numbers on my success because I'm all about helping people. And so I set goals. So I set annual goals, I set quarterly goals, and then I break my goals down so I know what I want to achieve each month and each week. But there's nothing monetary. There's nothing numbers. I know a lot of people say, I want to, grow this, earn this, do this. Mine's all about how I feel like I'm about to contradict myself, but I don't think I am. So I want to be a guest on podcasts. I want to write articles in magazines. I want to get in front of as many people as I can because I want to help those people. It isn't about how many people have downloaded my podcast. It's about how many people have listened to me. It's about how much content can I put out into the world, because if I'm putting it out into the world, I know people are going to listen and watch it. I don't care how many. If I can make a difference to one person, I'm happy. That is, if I'm showing up and I'm being consistent and I'm showing up for my clients, then I'm happy. And for me personally, what does success look like for me? It's living a life that lights me up and that makes me happy, where I'm fulfilled. And for some people, that might be being a CEO of a FTSE 500 company. It might be standing up in front of 10,000 people singing their latest song. It might be earning £10,000 a month. Whatever it is, it might be that they want to be a hairdresser and cut 10 people's hair. It doesn't matter what you want to do. Success is yours. We're all individuals. So don't compare your success with someone else's. Don't compare your dreams with someone else's. Whatever your dream is, whether it's to make a difference in the world or win at the Olympics or, stand in front of, whatever your goal is, whatever it is, make it a goal that really aligns with your values, really lights you up, and make it a goal that if you don't hit that number, it doesn't matter, because it's about what you're doing rather than what you're achieving. Does that make sense?
I love it. So Tamzin, we're running up on like 40 minutes of conversation, which I love, by the way. But before we close off, what I'd love for you to do, again, I really love having conversation with you, and we've talked about having more of these, which I'm thrilled, by the way, that we can do this. So meeting great people in life, I think, is one of the huge advantages to having a podcast. If you don't have a podcast and you're listening to this, this is a great example. For me to have time with Tamzin, who's so gracious with her time when she could be doing other things, to stop and spend time with us, it's amazing. So you get to meet great people in life, and you get to be inspired by other people in a different part of the world, and you can do this. It's just so amazing that this is an opportunity for podcasters to build relationship and community. So Tamzin, again, I really do honor and thank you for volunteering to do this with me. Again, it's great. So there's a new podcaster listening to this, Tamzin. They're unsure about their message, or they're unsure about the next step. They need some motivation to start, to push record, or get themselves out there for the first time. They might be a little bit nervous about doing this. What would you say to them to get them past that hurdle and get them going on their way? How do we encourage somebody today to start?
Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is you need to figure out what you want to do. What type of podcast you want to launch? What are you going to be talking about? And I would say keep this super, super simple. Keep it something that you can talk for hours about, that you love talking about, and that it resonates with you. What you don't want to do is launch a podcast and you don't know the subject. It doesn't really interest you. It's something that you're going to have to spend a lot of time rehearsing, preparing for. You don't want to do that. This is your podcast. It's you. For you to be as relaxed and enjoy it as much as possible, it needs to be a subject that you enjoy. So if you're thinking, oh, I could have I don't know. I still don't know what the subject would be. Grab a pen and paper and write down all the topics that interest you. All the topics that interest you. What could you talk about for hours? And then have another piece of paper and think about, what do you want to achieve by launching a podcast? Is it that you want to grow your business? Is it that you just want to help people? Is it that you want to have a podcast that's to do with a hobby? Is it that you want to help people? What is the thing that you want to achieve? And then what you'll do is you'll have, if it's simply that you want to help people who have pets whose pets are misbehaving, let's go for that. So pets that are misbehaving, and you just want to help as many people as possible, and that's what you've written down on your piece of paper. And then look at the other piece of paper you have and look at all the topics, and you'll find there'll be a correlation somewhere with the things that you love talking about, your end goal, and then you've almost got your topic and your podcast idea. And I think my recommendation is keep it simple, have it something that you enjoy, just do it. Don't think too much about it. Don't write scripts. Don't have a full-blown script to read from, because when we're having a natural conversation like me and Dave are having at the moment, you can tell it's natural. If I start reading from a script, I will sound very different to how I do now, and that isn't great listening. And if you are really nervous about starting the podcast and hitting record and you're worried about it, invite somebody to come and maybe co-host with you, or invite somebody to come be your guest, so that you have somebody that you trust, that you know you can have a conversation with, that you're happy to just have a conversation with. And that will help you to just not be as nervous. And if you are nervous, it's okay. It's natural to be nervous. If you're feeling super nervous, my biggest suggestion is put your feet firmly on the floor, feel the floor beneath your feet, and just count to 5 or count to 10. Clear your mind. Also, before you hit record, give yourself 10-15 minutes of no interruptions. So don't start looking at emails, don't start making phone calls, don't start having an argument with your partner, husband, children, whoever. Just have some quiet, calm, relaxing time, so you can go into it with a really fresh, clear frame of mind. And then if you feel yourself, if you feel the anxiety coming up and the panic coming up, have your feet on the floor and just go back to that grounding process. And just be as confident as you can. And if something happens and you say the wrong word, or you say the wrong thing, or you go, I don't know what to say, it's fine. You edit it out. It's not a problem.
Exactly. I don't know if you've heard this saying before, Tamzin, but Tamzin, have you heard this before? Wherever you are, be all there. So if you're podcasting and you're going to hit record, be all there. Don't be half there and like looking at something else and trying to remember if you left the stove on or whatever. Wherever you are in conversation with people, you talked in our last episode about going for a walk with no phone, right? Just be there. Wherever you are, be there, right? And be all there, not just part of you. I think that's really important. I got one more quote for you. You gave me a quote at the beginning about how it's not crowded in the extra mile and people need to go back and listen to that again. I have a quote for you. How's this? Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. So this is all about dreaming. All right. And I'll put this in the podcast as well in the show notes so you don't have to try to remember all this. I'm going to try to say the name of who said this, and you can maybe, if this sounds familiar, maybe you can help me. But Anton de Saint-Exupéry, okay. I believe. And if I say that wrong, I apologize. But this is the saying. This is what he said. If you want to build a ship, don't herd people together to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea.
Oh, I love that quote. I've never heard that before. Never heard that.
I'll do it one more time. If you want to build a ship, don't herd people together to collect the wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea.
That is beautiful.
Isn't that amazing?
That is so beautiful.
Instead of focusing on the tasks, instead of focusing on the 1, 2, 3s, focus on the result. Where are we going to end up after the ship is built? We're going to be on the endless, boundless sea where there's the skyline and the horizon and the ocean is just meets. That's where we're going to end up. And in podcasting and coaching and whatever you're doing, don't focus on just the tasks, but all the little things that have to happen, but also focus on, hey, once I get all these things done, look what's available to us because we built it properly. I love it.
I think that's such an important message, isn't it? I talk a lot about breaking things down and doing things one step at a time. But we have to have that goal in mind. We have to know where that I can picture it now, that beautiful sunset on a calm sea. What is the end goal? And I think you asked me earlier, Dave, and I don't think I answered the question about how do I help my clients plan their goals, or how do I work with my clients for them to see what success is. Everything's individual for everybody. I don't set what their success is, they set it. We all know deep down, if we were listening to Dave saying that quote to us, or telling us that quote, some of us could picture that, and we could picture those seas and the sky and how beautiful it is. But some of us wouldn't be able to picture it. Some of us would be thinking about something else. And so one person's dream and one person's success is so different for everybody. But finding what that thing is for you and for everybody around you, whether it's you're building teams or you're building a podcast full of amazing followers, whatever it is, make it as magical as that. Make it as magical as that sunset over that beautiful, beautiful sea, because keep that vision there, because that's what will help you to go that extra mile. Yeah.
And I love that the two things go hand in hand. You have to build the ship to get to the ocean, but you can't negate the dream as well. So have a balance between the dream of what's going to happen if you do it properly, and then realize that the dream would never come true if you didn't do the work in the first mile. See how we tie this back together? In the first mile, you do all the work, you assemble all the wood, you create the ship. But in the second mile is when you get to experience the benefits of all the work that happened in the first mile.
Yeah. That was seamless. Anyone thought we'd
see that?
I know. I was so impressed how that just came right back around there. Yeah.
What? Yeah. This was not scripted by any means at all. I love it. And that's the power of a great communication and great content with somebody who's super amazing. Tamzin, again, I am thrilled to do life with you and chat with you. You are a superstar in my books, and again, a big time smarty pants as well. So, Tamzin, again, in case people haven't heard our last 2 episodes before this one, this is episode 3 together, you definitely have to go back and listen to more Tamzin, and we all need more Tamzin in our life. Tamzin, how do people find you? What do we do? Share the thing, because I know you got to run to your next thing. So how do we connect?
Yeah, so I'm Tamzin, and my business is Tamzin Hall Coaching. So I'm on Instagram, Tamzin Hall Coaching, and my website is tamzinhallcoaching.co.uk.
Send Tamzin a message and let her know that you appreciate her as much as I do. And thank you, Tamzin, for making time for us again. And we'll catch you on the next one, all right?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll see you all soon.
Awesome. Hey, this is Dave from the podcast. Thank you for listening to the How to Podcast series. We have a new website, easy to find, howtopodcast.ca, not .com, .ca. I'm in Canada, so .ca. Howtopodcast.ca is how to find us. How easy is that, right? How did I get that domain? Oh, howtopodcast.ca. Link in the show note below. This is just a quick little thing to let you know, hey, the website's being worked on. It's active. You can go there now. howtopodcast.ca. I would love for you to come over there. It's not the .com. Somebody already had that. I have the .ca because I live in Canada. Ta-da! So, howtopodcast.ca. I'll see you over there. Thank you for being part of the podcast. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow, and do all the things we ask you to do. Catch you on the next one.